So I think that was more south.
Yeah.
Like Seattle area, yeah. But I don't even think it happened that way. Raleigh, but yeah.
Yep, you put in their words around pay to offer.
No,
I don't think I ever have.
There was one that's really,
Really?
not the one from kind of it further south.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't there once a few years in Port Angeles or something like that? Something a few years back. They're nice little tornado or?
I don't think so.
Well, good evening, it's 6 p.m. Begin the meeting. Begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically Nooksack and Lummi tribes who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. On behalf of everyone here, we want to express our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Nooksack and Lummi tribes, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Next up is
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and then approval of the agenda, any changes? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
motion to approve agenda is written, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And before we go on to the next item, I had written a note here that Public Disclosure Commission reports are due by April 15th. If you hadn't had a chance to get those done, just, take a little bit of time to get those done. Next up is superintendent's contract. I'd like to welcome up Jessica. And I thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And we did incorporate a couple small changes. I think I mentioned that to you. And that should be, this is the version that incorporates those changes. So I just wanted to make sure that this was the correct version. And you'll be able to.
It looks to be, yes.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion on the superintendent's contract.
Motion to approve superintendent contract. Second. My
With
name
the-
is Brenda
the
Ray.
super- No, then.
Oh, for Jessica Shake.
Thank you.
I didn't crack that there.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we're, no other questions? So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Can I just say one thing really quick?
Yes.
I just want to say thank you to the board and to the community for giving me this opportunity to partner with all of you as we build toward Mount Baker's future. I'm really looking forward to getting to know each of you better and for you to get to know me and my family as we prepare to make our home here. And I can promise you that I'm going to dedicate myself to serving the students and the staff here. And even though I don't start for a couple more months, 3 more months, I'll be doing everything I can to prepare myself so I can hit the ground running in July. So,
Awesome.
thank you.
Great.
And I wanted to, acknowledge, thank both the community, the staff, and the school board for the time and effort and careful deliberation. I think we had a lot to work with, and so I appreciate all that, the effort that everyone has put into it. Thank you. Next up is good of the order. Ed?
Yeah, so a few things to touch on. All elementary focus this time. We did an author visit recently. Kirby Larson came and visited with students at all 3 of our elementary schools and shared about some of the books she's written, which is obviously entertaining for the kids. She also spoke about the writing process and that kind of stuff to inspire the writing in all the students. Also at Harmony, the Missoula Children's Theater put on a play of Sleeping Beauty. I'm not sure if you had a chance to attend, but something was a pretty solid production and a great turnaround. Those students only had a week of rehearsals and were able to put on a pretty good play. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge that it's elementary conferences this week. So big thanks to the families for their engagement during this process and supporting learning of all their students. Also acknowledging the work that our teachers put in to communicate the successes and next steps for all the students. Especially on this Thursday night, they're all working late tonight. It's evening conference night. So that's what I have for good of the order.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very much. Next up is the consent agenda. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up is public comments. And Tammy, do we have anyone signed up? And let's see, Tammy, you've got the blocks.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I will remind the audience, we welcome public comments. We're very happy to have public comments. We're glad you're here. We do limit individual comments to 3 minutes. So please keep your comments within 3 minutes and when it gets to 3 minutes, if you're not done, I will ask you to conclude because that's fair for everyone. So and keep our meeting moving along. So first up is Ginny Sullivan.
Great. Hi, my name is Jenny Sullivan. I'm the chair here of the English department. I've taught everything from 8th grade English to our college classes here in the last 5 years. The last time I spoke to the school board, I was heartened really by the board's response to the advocacy for more transparency in the budget process. And because of that, I readily volunteered today to speak to you because it's become increasingly clear that the junior and senior high cannot continue to operate safely without an assistant principal. When I found out, however, that tonight was the night I had chosen to speak and you all were considering this amendment to sports, I was deeply disappointed in our school district. My first reason for disappointment is that this amendment is discriminatory. As a public school, we have a moral and a legal obligation to serve any young person that lives inside of our boundaries. And that means we serve our trans students. This amendment is not serving our students. It is serving a political agenda whipped into a frenzy by a Facebook algorithm and cable news. Additionally, this is just a PR nightmare. We are already struggling with our enrollment, which is directly contributing to our budget issues. And supporting this amendment is a news headline waiting to happen. I can see it now. Rural school supports discriminatory athletic policies in the news. Press like that lowers our enrollment and it discourages people from moving into our district. Multiple families have already left Baker for schools where they felt that their trans students would be better supported. How many families do we want to lose? Finally, considering this amendment feels like a waste of time that could be spent on our very real problems. Without an assistant principal, we're running our admin and our counselors ragged, and we're frankly biding our time until something goes terribly wrong because we don't have enough adults to cover our bases effectively. I would like to remind you that it is our job to teach our kids to value teamwork, to lose gracefully, to win humbly, and to see the humanity in everyone. Those values are the reasons we encourage students to join sports in the first place, not to win a title. Supporting these amendments will undo the lessons we hope to teach. Instead of leaving here Baker strong, we will have taught our young people to value divisiveness over teamwork, to blame others for their losses, and to dehumanize their neighbors. I strongly suggest that you vote to oppose these amendments. However, if you vote in support, please consider finding a way to pay for an assistant principal so that we will have enough admin to cover all of our sporting events, so that when this does blow up in our faces, there might be someone there to keep the Seattle Times at bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's let each speaker, I would prefer it if we don't applaud, possibly at the end of the, I don't know, I just think, I don't think we have an actual policy on applause, just decorum. So it's within that. Brandon White.
Hello. My name is Brandon White. Good evening. I'm glad you're allowing me to speak tonight. I'm an elementary PE teacher at Harmony and at Acme Elementary. I'm also a father to two boys and to two girls, and they're where I'm here tonight. I am here to not get all teary-eyed first. That's not my objective. But I urge you to support these two amendments for two reasons. The number 7 and 8, because they align with Title IX. And secondly, they ensure we can celebrate all student athletes for their accomplishments regardless of their gender identity. First, Title IX was enacted to guarantee equal opportunities for women in education, including athletics. It is a cornerstone of fairness, ensuring female athletes have a level playing field. Allowing biological males to compete in female sports undermines this equity. Research from as recently as 2021 shows, from the British Journal of Sports Medicine, shows that even after testosterone suppression, which Washington State does not require, biological males still retain significant physical advantages, up to 10 to 20% in strength and speed. So this isn't about identity, it's about biology. By adopting either of these amendments, we protect the integrity of Title IX and the opportunities it promises our female athletes. Second, these amendments let us celebrate all students for their achievements. Trans athletes who win, particularly in individual events, frequently face online criticism for their successes. And that's wrong. It is. Athletes should not be ridiculed for their achievements, but rather celebrated because they've worked hard and won. This isn't the fault of the athletes. They're simply competing within the current system. Keep in mind, sports aren't just about winning, like the previous person said before me. They're about growth and effort and discipline. I love what she said about winning humbly or losing with grace, or winning humbly. I don't know, it was good. Right? I teach my students in my classes that same thing. We all win, we'll all lose. Fair competition requires categories based on physiological and biological differences, ensuring all athletes can compete on an even playing field. Our transgender athletes deserve opportunities too. And we can give them a place to be celebrated and recognized for their growth and effort in the correct spaces by adopting one of the WIA amendments. This way, every student's hard work is honored, no matter who they are. So I strongly urge you tonight to act with fairness, to heed common sense, to respect what most Mount Baker parents want, and to stand up to Olympia and champion these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Breeze Bender.
Hi. So I am a mom, an aunt, a grandma, and I work as a paraeducator at Acme Elementary. I am here to show my support for all of the women in my life and support women's sports. I also used to be a nurse. There is a difference between a biological male and a biological female. And we need to recognize that. It is a safety concern to have my daughter, my nieces, my granddaughter competing against biological males. I'm not concerned about a child being transgender let's celebrate it in another way. But let's acknowledge that there is a difference in the muscular makeup of males and females. There just is. And we're looking to have a lawsuit if a child gets hurt out there. It's not safe, it's not fair. And we also need to look at not punishing a group of girls and their coaches if they go to compete against another school that does have males competing in female sports, for them to say, we're not playing tonight. Our girls and our coaches should not be reprimanded for that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next up is Annie Elder. And welcome back, Annie. It's always good to see you back in the boardroom on the other side of the fence here.
Thanks. Guys, I'm coming to you as a Mount Baker parent, a mental health counselor, and a previous member of this school board. I've specialized working with gender expansive youth and adults for over 10 years, and I worked with most of you in some capacity and was treated as a respected member of the board whose ideas were valued. What you might not know about me is I'm queer and my partner is trans. Most of you don't know this because it has no impact on my intellect, my abilities as a therapist, a board member, a community member, or parent. But my family questions whether this school district is right for us every day. This board is getting in the weeds of the political weaponization of humans just existing. Your job is to protect students and ensure they have access to the best possible education. You don't have the skills or training to be weighing in on how anyone understands their gender or where they should be included. Trans people exist everywhere and have always existed. This current political climate has brought their existence into question, but it's rooted in violence and oppression. Trans people belong in sports. Most people in this room likely cannot name 5 trans athletes, let alone name 5 trans athletes dominating sport. That's because this isn't happening and has not happened. Rhetoric tells people that cis athletes are in danger when there's actually no evidence supporting these claims either. We prioritize advantage in athletic competition, but only for cis people. There's no proof that being trans has any particular advantage over cis athletes to date. Trans participation does not endanger cis athletes, and they're manufactured excuses to validate exclusion. I don't believe anybody at this table has expertise or training to make this sort of determination. This supposed discourse in a room that is supposed to protect all students harms all students. It says trans people don't belong, and they don't belong at Baker. And to even the loudest member on this issue, I know you're a caring and compassionate human, and I would urge you to consider the shame you're perpetuating and the harm that these ideas are bringing to trans individuals and the harm to all students at Baker. I respect and appreciate the work all of you do so much. It's personal, and I will always advocate for the lives of all youth. Please stay focused on the good and important work that you all are trained to be doing, which is supporting, educating, and ensuring belonging for all youth. And please do not support resolutions 24, 25, 7, and 8. Thanks.
Yeah. Next up is Britta Martins.
Hi, my name is Britta Martins, and I'm one of the learning support teachers on the secondary campus. I originally signed up to this meeting to discuss the impacts of the lack of an AP on the secondary campus, which I unfortunately have to speak to quickly, but it should not take away from the importance of that issue. I have the utmost respect for our administrators, but not having an assistant principal on the secondary campus has greatly impacted our school's ability to have the support needed for both students and staff. We support students who come to us from the resource room setting, the ILC, the behavior program, at the elementary level. When we had an AP, I was able to ask for assistance from a person who knew the students and their individualized plans. Now when assistance is needed, the responsibility is passed on to our already overwhelmed administrative staff or passed on to staff whose job title is not assistant principal. This is unsafe and unsustainable. I'm also here to urge and express the vital importance that you, the school board, vote to oppose the 2 WIA amendments. As a public education teacher, I believe that every student should feel safe and like they belong in our schools. These amendments, these poorly veiled attempts of discrimination towards trans girls, do not make school a safe and belonging place for LGBTQIA students. The most prevalent reason I hear these amendments are being proposed is for the safety of cis girls. Yet there isn't any conclusive research that demonstrates that girls are at a higher risk of getting injured when playing a team with a trans girl compared to playing a team of all cis girls. This expressed need to protect our girls is just a way for people to bring their personal values and beliefs into public education, but is the opposite of what public education is about. If we are truly looking through a data-based lens of safety for our students in our school, the picture painted is far different than the one these amendments are suggesting. According to the Trevor Project, the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention nonprofit organization for the LGBTQ+ young people, and I quote, anti-transgender laws cause up to 72% increase in suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth. This means that these amendments have the potential to impact students' lives. That is a safety issue. That is what the school board is considering. I know this is a polarized issue, and I know I'm not likely to change anyone's personal opinions regarding this topic, so let's look at this legally. Washington state law prohibits discrimination in public schools on the basis of sex, race, color, religion, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and disability. These amendments are in direct violation of Washington state law, clear and simple. If these amendments are followed, Mount Baker is making themselves vulnerable to lawsuits, which frankly, this district cannot afford. Finally, I want to thank the board for moving this meeting so some teachers have the opportunity to speak to this issue. However, it's important to point out that our elementary teachers do not have this opportunity with evening conferences. I hope you take that into consideration during your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Janet Butler. Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I truly do appreciate it. I'm here before you as Mount Baker's volleyball coach, a mom, a former collegiate athlete, and an advocate for young women in sport. My role as a coach and a mom go hand in hand as I strive to be a role model and safe space, beyond teaching the fundamentals of volleyball and committing to fostering self-confidence, self-worth, and a positive environment, one that protects and empowers both my daughter and my athletes on and off the court. Tonight, I want to address why I stand against allowing biological males to compete in female sports. This is not about opinion, but about facts, biological differences between male and female that impact safety, fairness, and opportunity. We could look at physiological and anatomical differences, muscle mass, and hormones to show the distinct and irrefutable evidence of these differences between sexes. And that is what increases the risk of injury, raises privacy concerns, and creates inequity in competition, title records, scholarships, and recruitment. What concerns me most is the expectation that we are expected to accept these policies without question, silencing discussion. Advocating for fairness and safety is not hate. It is ensuring that female athletes receive the protections and opportunities they deserve. It is neither fair nor reasonable to expect female athletes to compete against biological males or share private spaces such as locker rooms. This is not a hypothetical issue. Our program faced this firsthand at Squalicum High School when we unexpectedly learned of a biological male competing against our junior varsity team. Regardless of their skill level, the fact remained the playing field had changed. Prioritizing our athletes' best interest, we attempted to forfeit the game. Attempts to have a respectful conversation were met with resistance, that not playing would be unfair and unjust. The expectation was clear to comply without question. Furthermore, the situation created unnecessary anxiety amongst our team, coaches, and parents, something I believe shouldn't have been an issue that any of us had to navigate. Let me be clear, this is not about hate, but about preserving the integrity of women's sports, maintaining a safe environment on and off the court, and to ensure female athletes have a level playing field, which is what Title IX was originally created to protect. We are watching that playing field erode. I urge all of us, coaches, parents, administrators, to take a stand. Protecting our daughters today empowers them to stand up for themselves and their teammates tomorrow. Moving forward, I support the 2025 WIAA's proposed amendments supporting exclusive female categories. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Lindsay Zecker.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay and this is Etta. Good evening, members of the board, educators, parents, and students. I'm Lindsay Tucker and I use they, she pronouns. I'm a parent, a former professional athlete, a coach, and a trauma therapist specializing in supporting gender expansive individuals. I'm here to speak on behalf of fairness, inclusion, and the well-being of all students in their schools, specifically transgender youth in sports. At the heart of this discussion is a basic truth. Every student deserves the opportunity to participate, to belong, and to thrive. Sports are more than just games. They teach teamwork, discipline, and resilience. They build confidence and create lifelong friendships. For many students, sports are not just an extracurricular activity, but a vital part of their identity and development. Denying youth the right to participate in sports consistent with their gender identity takes away more than just a jersey. It takes away their sense of belonging. Let's be clear, trans students are not threats to fairness or competition. The real threats to fairness in youth sports are lack of resources, economic barriers, and disparities in coaching and facilities, not the inclusion of transgender athletes. This is not about an unfair advantage. This is about making sure every child has the opportunity to grow through sports like their peers. Additionally, excluding trans students from sports sends a dangerous message. Studies show that transgender youth already face higher rates of bullying, depression, and even suicide. When we tell a child that they don't belong, that their identity is a problem, we contribute to these harms. But when we welcome them, when we show them that they're valued, we help create a school environment where all students feel safe and supported. I urge you to stand on the side of compassion, inclusion, and fairness. School should be a place where every student, no matter their gender identity, feels safe, respected, and able to participate fully in student life, including sports. I ask you, what kind of message do we want to send to students? One of exclusion and discrimination, or one of belonging and acceptance? I hope you choose the latter. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up is Natalie Chavez. Evening.
Hello, my name is Natalie Chavez. Thank you for listening to public comments this evening. I spoke out against biological males playing in girls' sports and using girls' locker rooms, bathrooms at the Ferndale School Board meeting on Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. The last part of my 3-minute comment at that meeting was as follows, quote, I happen to be a lifelong Democrat, and none of my Democrat relatives or friends are okay with biological males playing in girls' sports or using girls' rooms or bathrooms. I have yet to find one person who I personally know who is okay with this. Are you all okay with this? What about equal rights for our biological girls? Inclusivity so that they can play in their own sports without male dominance, intimidation, and threat of injury. It's time to take a stand. It's time to rock the boat, and that time is now, unquote. Ironically, a 15-year-old girl in Tumwater got injured a couple of weeks after that Ferndale meeting. She got injured by a large, tall, 18-year-old biological male while playing in her JV basketball game. The referees didn't call a foul or even an injury timeout as she got up with assistance by her teammate and limped off the court. She had a teammate, Frances, who was sitting on the bench because she had refused to play in the game due to the biological male on the opposing team. Frances later wrote a very thoughtful post on her social media without naming the biological male. She had been bullied and harassed for taking a stand and had people telling her that they hope she died. Oddly enough, however, she is the one that is being investigated by her school for bullying and harassment. What are a few solutions that can be suggested to school board members in Whatcom County so that trans student athletes feel like they belong and are included in sports if they choose to play sports in school competitively? Perhaps a trans league for trans athletes. And if there are not enough trans athletes to create a team, then how about a trans PE class that is offered at each public school, or just simply that biological males play with biological males and biological females play with biological females in their biologically correct sports team. It is my hope that the injured Tumwater's teenager's family files a lawsuit. As we have seen during COVID, there is usually no accountability or change that occurs until lawsuits are filed. And actually, I do believe a lawsuit was filed. And also I believe that another lawsuit, a complaint, was filed by the Washington Parents Network. So we'll see how that goes. And I understand you're between a rock and a hard place. At the federal level, they're saying, we're gonna pull school funding if you don't follow this. And the state level, they're saying, we're gonna pull state funding. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Natalie. Next up is Marcy Peterson.
Good evening.
Mhm.
My name is Marsha Peterson. I'm a Mount Baker School District community member. But I spent my career as a high school teacher and I coached multiple sports. I also advised students in academic competitions. I took them up and down the West Coast. I am speaking out tonight because as a community member, I just want all kids to participate. And I don't think the amendments support that. And so I would just like to encourage the board to do whatever they can to make sure all kids get to play. Thank you.
That's all we have written. Did anyone not sign up that planned to speak?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to talk fast, sorry. Tonight, we're having a discussion about basing decisions on best science, fairness, and safety for all students, aren't we? And yet I can't help but wonder if I was a transgender student or her parent sitting in the audience tonight, if I wouldn't feel like I was on the backside of a dark mirror looking out at the rest of us. Let's start with the science. Both of the amendments under consideration should be rejected on scientific grounds alone because they replace the more precise and scientifically preferred sex assigned at birth with biological sex, which just last month in an all-district training our entire teaching staff was taught is an outdated term based on current scientific understanding of human sexuality. In fact, the WIAA amendments themselves submit this when they provide for a third category of sex and then go on to say that this category must on a case-by-case basis be assigned. Second, actual science tells us that the biological sex of humans is complicated. Close to 2% of humans do not have a simple XX or XY chromosome configuration, about the same percentage of people born with red hair and green eyes. Talk to me later if you want to hear more about the 7 possible configurations of XY chromosomes, interactions between chromosomes, specific genes on those chromosomes, androgens, cellular receptors, and more, all of which play a role in biological sex, including brain development. Moving to fairness, both amendments should be rejected on the grounds that they are based on an ecological fallacy, which is what happens when you make inferences about individuals based on aggregate data for a group they belong to. A trend or an average for a large population is not meant to hold true for every individual in the population. How fair do you suppose our hypothetical transgender girl who is 5'7", weighs 160 pounds, and has lower testosterone than 80% of cisgender girls because she's on suppressants, feels hearing that she's being denied a place on the volleyball team with 2 cisgender teammates who are 5'10", 170 pounds, and 5'11", 185 pounds, respectively? Not only that, she spent her whole life watching older cousins play on volleyball teams where the girls range from 4'11", 95 pounds to 6'2", 195 pounds. Do you think she's feeling like this discussion is actually about fairness? Moving to safety. If I was that student in the audience listening to how unsafe it is for cisgender girls to play on the same field as me, I might agree that safety is absolutely the paramount duty of adults in the system. But I might also wonder why, if this conversation is really about safety, we're talking about the danger of transgender athletes competing on girls' teams instead of cisgender boys competing on football teams. I might wonder this since 2022, I could only find 4 examples in the entire USA where trans athletes injured other athletes, while in the same time period, an estimated 2 to 4 million injuries and 8 to 12 deaths occurred on football teams. In addition, I might wonder why, if we're talking about safety, we're not talking about these statistics from the Healthy Youth and National CDC surveys. 25% of transgender students reported skipping school because they felt unsafe, compared to 9% of male students. 26% of transgender students reported attempted suicide in the past year, compared to 5% of males and 11% of females. 72% of transgender students report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, compared to 11% of girls and 5% of boys. Only 36% of transgender teens said they belong at school, compared with 51% of girls and 62% of boys.
I want to be clear, I'm not here to debate or disagree with the parents testifying tonight. They're showing up and doing their number one job, which is to advocate for their child. But my job and your job are different. We're charged with advocating for everybody's children, including our students whose only daily reality makes them the least included, the most often regulated into other and lesser categories, and the least safe.
Thank you. So, if no one else has signed up or indicated, that concludes our public comments. Thank you all for attending and thank you for the comments. Next up, we have action items, and the first action item is our 2025-2026 district calendar. Nick, if you could address that.
So earlier this year, the board approved some pretty typical dates on a school calendar. Following that approval, a calendar committee was convened that was made up of staff from all bargaining units in the district, as well as parents from across the district. Look at some options, as well as develop a survey that was sent out to all families and community members. That survey had 315 responses, and as the group made their way through the responses, the group developed the calendar that you have for your consideration tonight.
First of all, any questions or comments on the calendar?
I know that there were concerns about late arrival for elementary kids.
Yeah.
What was the discussion around that?
Yeah, and that is definitely still something that we being the district side of things, I've started some conversations with the cabinet level about how to better support those needs. We have taken some efforts this year to provide childcare centrally located at this Deming campus, which might not necessarily work for families who are headed into town. Another challenge that we face potentially is for Glenhaven folks, even if we provide childcare at Acme, that's still kind of a circuitous route if they're working in Cedar Woolley. So it's still something we're working on and something we're trying to solve. But based on the results we got from all stakeholders, the benefits of continuing with Wednesday late arrival prevailed. Yep.
Other questions?
Well, I've got a comment on
Huh?
I've got a comment on
Oh,
this.
yeah, or comments. Yeah, questions or comments. Go ahead.
Any other changes to the calendar?
Yes.
From last year?
Yes. There is a Thursday holiday, the same week as Martin Luther King Day, in observance of Treaty Day.
Okay. So I've got some comments about late arrival and about Treaty Day. Do we have any data that shows that the late arrival is resulting in an improvement for our student learning?
Because it's only been in place this year and no data exists.
It's been 3 years.
Late arrival has only been in place this year.
Okay. You know what I mean, though. We've had 3 years where we've set aside time for
release time. Yeah. I mean.
Oh, you keep turning it off. Sorry, everybody.
I don't know if there's no specific data sets to track that specifically. The anecdotal data would show that, I think you're asking for student outcome data. I think the student outcome data that is public. So whatever correlations need to be drawn from that is up to the person, I suppose.
Okay. And have we received any guidance from WASDA on how to hold accountability for results related to the in-school training and teaching training for our teachers?
Is that for me or Russ?
I guess that's for Russ.
Okay.
Ed asked you a question.
Yeah.
Ed asked you a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was writing a note on that. Yeah, go ahead.
Has WASDA provided any guidance with regards to accountability related to this time that we're setting aside?
Gee, I can't think of anything that in terms of specific to.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like, can you clarify what you mean about accountability?
That the time that we're setting aside, not having students in school, is yielding results.
Got it.
I would think that it would be. I mean, the teachers are getting instruction on how to be better teachers. And that's part of the goal is you want better teachers to teach the kids, but when they are in instructional time, they are getting like the best that we can give them.
Right.
I definitely think that, and I know we heard that the format that was used at the most recent one, that everybody really liked that, and maybe that was like an answer.
Yeah, that was the answer.
I do think that, the feedback I've heard is that the late arrival is better than the early release.
That's what that's what the calendar committee, when they received.
And that might be something that we could look at in a study session ourselves, is to look at that data pre in-service time and post and see if we're noticing trends. I mean, it sounds like you're sort of asking a return on investment kind of question.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think-
that's valid.
It's just, ever since the COVID lockdowns, I think there's a lot of mistrust of people that we hope and expect have students' best interest in mind to actually do that. So I've lost trust and confidence in all the players, in WASDA, in OSPI, in our state government, and in the WEC. I think the WASDA, which is supposed to be our representative in providing guidance, I think a fair criticism is that they're too closely aligned with OSPI.
I don't think that's relevant to whether or not our calendar is.
May I finish?
I'm just saying.
May I finish?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. With OSPI, and I would say criticism of both OSPI and WASDA is that they're too greatly influenced by the WEC or the state teachers union. And I think if the union says we want to have time set aside during school for learning, for teacher training, that's going to be WASDA's policy, and I don't trust that that's the best policy for our students. We don't, if they were really serious about it, I think they would be providing guidance to us on how to have accountability to make sure that we're getting value of that. So we're in a situation where I don't trust WASDA, I don't trust OSPI, I don't trust our state government, I don't trust the WEC. So what am I left with? What I know, which is unfortunate because I know very little. But I know that students are more likely to learn when they are in school versus when they are not in school. And so if we don't have anything to support that they are better off not being in school, then I don't support this calendar. My other comment on Treaty Day is if we're going to basically extend the school year by 1 day, correct? Okay. So first of all, we're already starting school on the Wednesday before Labor Day, which is quite early. I doubt there's much appetite to reduce summer vacation further. I don't think a day of learning at the end of the school year in the middle of June, is equivalent to a day of learning in January. Lastly, I want to touch on the issue of land acknowledgements, which we currently perform at the start of our meeting. 2 years ago, when we wrote the DNR to continue timber sales.
This isn't relevant to the
May I finish?
calendar. No, but Ed, you're getting off track here. What we're talking about is the calendar.
Yeah, I think we probably should cover the land acknowledgements.
It's related to the treaty. I put them in the same category.
Yeah,
So we've got a
if
treaty
you're
day,
full,
land acknowledgement.
that's fine.
Thank you. When we wrote to DNR to continue timber sales on school trust lands, there was opposition based on the perceived inconsistency between our land acknowledgements and our logging activities. Recognizing Treaty Day potentially intensify these criticisms, placing the school board in a delicate position. This could affect our ability to advocate for timber sales, which is crucial for funding for our district.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Any other comments on the calendar? I do want to say, for my part, professional development is crucial for academic success and teacher collaboration. I think the days of when teachers could close their door and teach whatever they wanted, however they wanted, never worked back then and certainly don't work now. And I think the teachers and administrators in this room understand that even better than I do, even though I've been on the board for a number of years. So, but the state does not and will not fund the amount of professional development that is necessary to actually accomplish the job. And we're right now, we're lobbying to get better funding for our materials and supplies, pay for our insurance and utilities costs. We're lobbying for getting our full funding for special education, our full funding for transportation. There's not the money nor the appetite in the legislature to extend any more funds for professional development. They're not even going to get even close to what our key requests are budget-wise. We're lucky if we get even part of one of those. And so, I feel that using what otherwise would be classroom time is a necessary evil. I don't think it's perfect. And I agree. I would rather have the kids always go to school and do that professional development outside of the school year in addition to the school year. We used to do more than we do now outside of the school year, but we've had to collapse that to be able to accomplish professional development and be able to fit it in our budget. And so that's the reason why we're doing this. It's not ideal, but I think given the circumstances, it's our best amongst difficult choices. So that's why I support the calendar, the work of the calendar committee with input from staff and parents. I think has crafted a calendar that we can all work with. And I'd like to look for a day when we didn't have to carve out where we didn't have to ask for waiver days. I mean, I can't even remember when we didn't ask for waiver days. But I don't see that coming. I don't see that coming in the foreseeable future. Could be because we have so many funding costs that are going unmet that the state's not going to add to that. So, and regarding the treaty days, I think that's a separate issue that I'm going to keep advocating for a temperament. I mean, and I don't think it conflicts with the treaty. In fact, the Department of Natural Resources actually works very closely with the tribes to uphold the treaty rights, which hunting and fishing on all state lands, and those things. So they do work very closely. And I agree, there's times we don't agree on things, but there's citizens who aren't part of the treaty that don't agree either. So I see them as separate issues. So I think I honor the work of the calendar committee and all that went into it. So that's why I feel like we'll support the calendar. Any other things? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the 25-26 district calendar.
Motion to approve the 25-26 district calendar. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All opposed?
Nay.
There's one. Thank you. And then next up is, so what I want, see, we have 4 resolutions concerning the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association proposed rules amendment. And I will say this is unusual. The original purpose of our action on the rules amendment was to provide guidance for our WIAA representative to then to then use the board's guidance to guide their guidance for WIAA. I've asked for that numerous years in my role as LIGS rep for guidance on certain things that I thought, you know, we may weigh this way and may weigh that way, but it's always been a sense of the board. I've never really done a resolution. So this is the first time we've done a resolution, and the resolution is kind of running alongside the guidance, I would say, because the resolution is something that's come from actually it came from Linden School District originally. So what I wanted to do to do this efficiently is cover all 4 resolutions, including the legal opinion that we received, and if you want to draw from OSPI opinion also, that's fine. But to cover all 4 in a discussion first, so that before we get to the individual ones, so that we can sort of set the landscape here first. And I thought maybe just to lay that out, to have those of us who proposed each one of the 4 resolutions to briefly introduce. I'm asking for brief introduction. And so I'd like to, and then we'll have a board discussion before we go on to actually considering one or more of those 4 resolutions. Since you brought both resolution 24-25-7 and 24-25-8 to the board, Ed, I'd like you to introduce the first 24-25-7, and I'd like to keep those 2 separate, but if you could introduce that resolution.
Yeah, I mean, we have the board doc with the WIA resolution. I could read that. It's pretty brief, but it's a resolution to create 2 categories, girls category based on sex, and then an open division.
And then resolution 8, I mean 24-25-8.
And then resolution 8 is a girls division based on sex, and then a boys division and an open division. So there's 3 divisions. So amendment 7 is 2 divisions, and amendment 8 is 3 divisions.
And then Danielle, you brought 24-25-9. You could briefly just give background on that.
Basically, it lays out the legal conundrum that our district and all districts in Washington State currently face, given that our state law, anti-discriminatory laws, and others listed in the resolution could be in conflict with the WIAA resolution. It's also in conflict with the guidance given to school districts by our state superintendent, Chris Whitehall. And in the letter that we received, it does sound that there's an appetite from the state to enforce against districts that don't uphold those laws. I drafted this resolution with the mindset that we hold nonpartisan roles as board members, and that our first duty is to protect the solvency of the school district, and that the majority of our funding comes from the state of Washington, over $30 million versus maybe 400,000 from federal funding. Though some of these legal conflicts that we're looking at, this resolution sort of lays out that we're in between a rock and a hard place. And that the guidance be that the WIAA seek additional counsel for the impacts of these changes to districts. And I would also say that what motivated how I drafted that resolution was the idea to uphold the law of Washington State. And again, we're in nonpartisan roles here, so it's not about what I personally believe or don't believe or support or don't support. This resolution is saying that our primary job is to secure the district and those conflicts between federal and state are going to have to get resolved outside of this boardroom. And they will get resolved because it impacts districts all over our state.
So, and then I wrote resolution 24-25-10. That's actually, intent wise, it's very similar to the 9, far less words. And when I read the proposed rule changes for WIA, I thought, and from what I had heard also, that they were not in alignment with state law. So I wrote to our Washington State School Directors Association lawyer actually 4 times asking her opinion on whether those proposed rules were in alignment with state law. And like a good lawyer who's not precisely on your dime at that moment, she avoided answering the question. And so I wrote that resolution sort of in recognition the importance of having boys and girls sports. And I have 3 daughters, so I did all put a lot of focus on sports, both in junior high, high school, college, and so I know that importance. But I also know that we're not, as Annie so eloquently pointed out, we're not experts in this, and this is not the level at an individual school district. We're rule takers, we're not rule makers, and so. This is not the level at which we will solve the problem. And so my proposal is to propose to the WIAA that they establish or promote the establishment of an expert work group to look at all of these issues and come up with recommendations to WIAA on how to fairly and equitably solve all of the concerns the best they can. And I don't know that there's a perfect solution, but I think, and the reason why I thought of having an expert work group is I serve on a number of statewide task force and work group, primarily for the Department of Natural Resources. And some of the work group work that I've done there has really shown me that when you put the real experts in the state together, you can really come up with some solutions that none of us would have thought of on our own. You get all of these levels in different, and so I think what I would like to see come out of this from our standpoint is to promote the state solving the problem statewide, and not have individual schools, because I don't think that we're going to be able to come up with a solution at district level that will be implemented, and we'll be spinning our wheels for quite some time. So that's that was the purpose in my drafting the resolution to put a solution at the state level. So anyway, so I think given that background, and then I also should point out, and I did request Nick ask our district attorney for an opinion on the resolutions on all four, because which I do, and the superintendent and the board chair will do whenever something sticks out. I mean, it definitely was one of those things where I thought, well, we need to have our so that we're not walking into these resolutions blind. And I'm glad I did, because our district's attorneys, has everyone had a chance to read that?
Yes.
It was very eye-opening, I thought. So Nick, if you could just kind of give a brief synopsis, or I didn't ask you if you would, but sorry.
Yeah, the synopsis of it is that, with 7, he did share that he had some questions about a certain portion of the resolution in its draft state about compelling staff to support one amendment over the other. He had some concern about the legal liability for the district. So following that, that resolution was changed to reflect those concerns. And then his reading of number 8, based on the plain language there, he does not feel that the authors are going to achieve what they actually intend to achieve. He thinks they've made a mistake in their wording, and that while their pro statement does support one thing over another, the actual amendment language keeps the system the way it is. And he communicated with the WIA attorney on just that fact, and that's where his advice came. I mean, the WIA attorney was pretty guarded, but his read was that amendment number 8 doesn't actually achieve what he believes the authors wanted to achieve. And then he had no concerns about 9 or 10, resolutions 24-25, 9 or 24-25-10.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that number 8. And I hadn't even noticed that, but when he mentioned that, I reread and saw, oh, it does it. It is what it says. So I wanted to, I wanted to then open it up for discussion first before we entertain out any one of the resolutions. So would you like to start this time, Jason?
Sure, I can start this time. I can start this time. First, I want to thank everybody for coming for public comment. Thank you. That was great. I do agree. The first person nailed it right. It's irritating for myself as well and others up here that we're dealing with this kind of stuff when we are worried about budget and next year and stuff like that. That's that we're in this, but we have to do that. So, yeah, we're in a tough spot. We really are. There's no right or wrong. There is right or wrong. That was a wrong thing to say. There's no way to not deal with the state on this matter. And we are either going to do it and possibly get in trouble and cost us or not. And that'll be decided, I guess. So that's all I got.
I did have a question on this because a lot of I hear a lot about it being the WIA amendments, but and then on here from the WIA website with their proposed amendments. So the WIA themselves don't write these. This was submitted by school district.
That's correct. So the WIA is a private nonprofit. That's why when you receive the message from Superintendent Reichdahl, the WIA Executive Director Mick Hoffman had requested opinion from the Attorney General's office, and Superintendent Reichdahl informed Director Hoffman that because they are not a state agency, they are a private nonprofit, they are not privy to an AGO opinion. And so then Reichdahl then did share his opinion, which is what you saw. Yeah. But the WIA, their structure is that they are made up of a representative assembly. And so this is how amendments occur within WIA, is either their executive board can submit these or their member districts can bring these forward. which is why, 7 was authored by the Linden School District.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I appreciate the letter from the lawyer. I mean, it really just drove home the fact that for me, I'm not willing to risk a lawsuit for our district for going against any laws. That seems irresponsible at this point. And also, it's very important to me that we are representing all students, and all students includes transgender students, and they're the important ones. All students are important. So I believe that doing 7 or 8 is going to just increase the amount of anxiety that those students have. And I can understand where everybody's coming from, but honestly, I don't think that I don't think it's right to disclude transgender athletes or any student at all. This is a slippery slope. So one day, today it's trans, what's it gonna be next? So I just, I don't see myself voting to approve 7 or 8. And I don't necessarily know that 9 and 10 are gonna be that hopeful either, but I'm certainly willing to consider those more than I would 7 and 8, so.
Okay. I'm gonna support 7 and 8. And
We know.
I guess I'll focus on those because I appreciate the work that you guys did, and I'm happy to support those. I don't see a problem with that. I want to recognize that this is a challenging issue. It demands our best effort to listen, reflect, and engage with one another respectfully. And that we have a chance to model for our students and our community what a civil discourse looks like when tackling tough questions. This amendment calls for 2 sports categories. To be clear, the amendment won't change school policy. We're bound to follow state law, and it will not carry any financial implications. As your WIA rep for the board, I'll share whatever the outcome is with the WIA. And I'd like to point out that 25 other school districts in Washington have already passed these resolutions, including Blaine, Meridian, and Linden. So why support the resolution? 4 reasons. 1, biology matters in sports. There are biological differences between boys and girls: height, muscle mass, bone density, lung capacity, and recovery rates that often give boys a physical advantage in athletic competition. As many people have said already, Title IX recognized this decades ago, creating a girls category to ensure fair opportunities for female athletes. But when the eligibility shifted from sex to gender identity, we unintentionally undermined that fairness. The number of students affected might be small, but the impact is profound. High school sports are fleeting. 4 years, a limited number of opportunities. Every athlete deserves a fair chance to shine. 2, a clear, consistent message. Our students deserve clarity. Physical differences between the sexes exist, but they don't define your worth. Supporting this resolution reinforces that truth. Fairness and inclusion. Imagine an ideal where everyone has a place in sports, a girl division based on sex, preserving a level playing field, and an open division where all are genuinely welcome. This approach requires collaboration, not division. I value those who see this differently. Your empathy and insight are vital to making the open division succeed. If either side digs in, hoping the other side fails, we all lose. But if we work together, we could build something worth the time and sacrifice. Now, fairness cuts both ways. Asking biological girls to give up their starting spot, their chance at a medal, or even their safety to accommodate others feels like too heavy of a burden. Yet asking transgender girls to compete in an open division instead of the girls' division requires sacrifice too. The difference is this: a girls' division defined by sex preserves fairness for half our athletes, while the open division ensures that no one is left out. It's not perfect, but it's equitable. Change is hard, no question, but our district is full of educators and administrators who handle complex, sensitive situations with skill and heart every day. I trust them to navigate that shift with the same care they show our students routinely. By supporting this resolution, we position ourselves demonstrating how to balance fairness, inclusion, and compassion in a way others can follow. Voting for the resolution isn't just about sports, it's about integrity. It promotes fairness for female athletes, offers a consistent message about human value beyond the physical, and fosters an environment where every student can thrive. It aligns with our mission to help students grow in confidence and character. That's that. On the legal portion, I felt in the way that it was written, it had something for both sides. If I have that here. Okay. Sorry. I just going to pull up the letter from the attorney. WIA amendment. So he does say, I want to point out, he said, Amendment 7 could cause an attenuated increase of liability. Well, that's lawyer language, so I had to look up what that means. Attenuated increase means a small increase, but would not be direct grounds for liability. So he says that on the one hand. On the other hand, he gives a fairly long example of of getting sued. So I feel like he covered all of his bases there with regards to how people might sit. So in any event, I think there's two ways to look at that, and I can see both sides of it. I think that's it.
Danielle?
I think I said most of my piece in my description of the resolution. I guess I would just I appreciate, Ed, your comments about wanting to model civil public discourse, and I appreciate the participation of all of our community members who've taken the time to come tonight and listen, share your perspectives. And I want you to know I wrote careful notes of what everyone said, because I am listening and I do care, and your voice matters. I'm in the headspace where this issue is going to play out on a state level, right? It will play out. And I worry for our district. We're still in binding conditions. OSPI has been kind and worked with us and extended that deadline from 2 years to 3 years so that we can squeeze that sponge a little less rigorously to lessen the impact of our students. Now is not a time that I want to see us putting our neck out there. Right? The state funds over 90% of our budget. And Chris Reichdahl has been very clear his stance on this issue. And I have concern for the solvency of our district. And so I guess I would advocate for the fiscally conservative approach to this issue and encourage people to make their voices heard in other avenues of advocacy. If you don't like the state law, change it. But we're nonpartisan. We're here for the school. That's our first priority. And to me, this feels like a partisan issue playing out with the potential ramifications to impact our kids' education. And we've already been through so much as a community, our teachers, our students. I don't want to see more division in our community. And so I would urge us all to consider taking a fiscally conservative approach, a nonpartisan approach, and consider resolution 9 or 10.
So I will address our attorney's opinion, and he did not weigh in on WIAA's exposure if the membership were to approve these amendments. He was only addressing Mount Baker school districts because the opinion is for Mount Baker school district, and it's just what exposure we would have as a district. I'm I think the exposure we have as a district is real. I mean, it is, it's slight, but a court case concerning those set of facts the plaintiff would be, I think, much more likely to win if they can show a history of discrimination. I mean, it's something we've tried to avoid, and I don't think we're perfect by any means in avoiding a history of discrimination, but we make as strong of attempts as we can, both primarily for the students' standpoint, but also for our legal protection. And I think that's important, but I'm also, apart from our own situation, I am concerned about WIAA itself if it were to pass a rule that's against the state law, because our dues are going up by 25% in a proposal this year. Our dues would have to go up by even more if they get embroiled in this kind of legal battle. And I don't think a nonprofit that's been going for 120 years wants to get embroiled in this kind of battle. I think it's better. These kinds of issues are, if anybody's going to deal with them statewide, it should be at the legislative level. They're the ones that are elected for weighing these kind of decisions statewide. And I don't think that we should attempt to put WIA in a hard spot that we would, I don't think we should be in a hard spot on this one, nor should they. So I think it's not wise for WIAA members to support them adopting a resolution that appears, it's fairly clear to me that 7 would violate state law. Jay said that 8 would not, as it's written, because 8 does absolutely nothing other than adds a lot of expense to school districts, because we have to hire coaches for an additional team that we won't have anybody join. And we don't have enough kids in that category. And the other thing with 7, and I don't think people have paid attention to too much, you eliminate the boys team and you open it up as an open team. So boys, girls, and trans athletes can all participate, which means that a girl who weighs 90 pounds, who could kick a 30-yard field goal, would qualify for the varsity team. And she'd have a 300-pound, several 300-pound kids breaking through the line trying to tackle her before she gets that kickoff. And plus girls soccer. So now we have all the girls playing on girls soccer.
I'm not sure I followed your logic on that.
Girls soccer could now, girls would have a choice then. Do I do girls soccer or do I do the open team? Where I might have a chance to kind of get better competition, get ready for college. I think, our better athletes probably choose to do the open team. And then we start to solve one problem, we've opened up a bigger problem.
Are you talking about Amendment 7 or Amendment 8?
7.
That's 7. So with seven,
Amendment 7 is written up.
eight doesn't change our current practice at all. Right. Because it was written poorly. But 7 opens up. You know, we try to solve a problem that we have a dozen kids in the state maybe in that category and open it up for all the girls in the state.
I didn't follow the logic of the example about the girl kicking field goals.
What's that?
I didn't follow the logic of your example about a female athlete kicking field goals.
Well, if she could, I'm not saying a 90-pounder could she'd have to be a pretty good kicker. You know as well as I do, it's hard to kick from 30, 40 feet, 40 yards out. But if you were successful at that, we could not deny them. It would be discrimination if they were as good as any boy on the team. We couldn't deny them that membership on the team. Or we'd be subject to a discriminations. So I think, but that's beside the point, because I think, you know, if it's not in accordance with state law, it's not going to happen. So that's why I proposed that we kick this up to a higher level and solve it statewide. And I wrote the language that where did I write that? That the WIAA establish or promote the establishment of an expert work group, because I knew they wouldn't want to establish themselves. They would want to promote the state legislature to establish that work group if they could, because if they did establish one themselves, what are they going to do with the findings? They need the state to own the findings of that, and whatever rule changes need to be done, whatever law changes need to be done to accommodate those would have to be done by the legislature anyway. So that's, and I think between resolution 9 and 10, there's no effective difference really. I kept mine in there because I like the simple language, because I think people will read it. And I really want the result to be that this work group gets established at the statewide level, that we do our little part to nudge it along from a little school district. And I did talk with Wazda's lawyer when I saw her last week, and I said, you know, I recognize you didn't want to answer my question directly, and I get that, I respect that. But I mentioned that I wanted, you know, that I was going to propose a resolution to establish an expert work group at the state level, and she said, "Oh, that's a good solution to that." You know, she was fully supportive of that. And as Jay mentioned in his legal opinion, we can do either 9 or 10. We can actually do 8 because it doesn't do anything legally and have no. But I think the problem with 8 is we don't have the money to start another an additional team for every sport. So I think so anyway, that's where I'm coming from. The fact that 25 districts out of 295 have supported this resolution kind of goes along with when at our Wazda Legislative Assembly, we voted on these issues last year, and they never got more than 20 or 25% support. So they don't really have that strong a support in school districts across the state, and I think they would even get less in the legislature, frankly. But I do think having some experts look at it, because legislators aren't experts either. They're just as much amateurs as we are, in my mind. You know, I've worked with them a lot, and I don't. Some of them are maybe in some fields, but as a whole, I think you need to have people who really know what they're talking about. And so that's why, I'm proposing 10 just because of the language. But I will, if you think that we can move on to a motion. I think We can either go through them one by one, or I can entertain a motion on any one of them. What's your preference?
Do it one by one.
What's that?
One by one.
Okay. Entertain a motion on resolution 24-25-7.
I guess I'll be a glutton for punishment. Propose a motion to approve Mount Baker resolution 24-25-7.
Any second? Not hearing a second, dies for lack of second. Entertain a motion on Mount Baker resolution 24-25-8.
Second.
I
seconded it.
We have to make a motion.
You can't second your own motion, Ed.
No, you proposed it.
No, I'm
pretty sure you
entertaining a
proposed it,
motion.
Russ. I heard you propose it.
No, I'm entertaining a motion. You have to pay attention to my language. I
thought I
try to
got
be
you.
at least semi-precise.
Oh, okay.
So do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for Mount Baker resolution 24-25-8.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
And I will vote nay. It's failed. And Mount Baker resolution 24-25-9. Do I hear a motion?
I'll do it. I'd like to propose Mount Baker resolution 24-25-9.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Were we doing 9 or 10?
This is 9.
Oh.
9. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3. So, and opposed? Two opposed. So it passes. And Mount Baker resolution 24-25-10, then,
It's redundant.
it's redundant.
Oh. Moving on.
Hmm?
Moving on.
So, and unless anyone, moves to reconsider their vote, who was in affirmative, then we will move on to the next action item, or the study system. Okay, thank you. So we will not vote on, I'll rule a resolution 24-25-10 as redundant. I will take it and table that. So next is study session, strategic plan goal, facilities, capital projects. Brian.
Thank you, everybody. So we're here looking at the capital projects budget so that I can start more thoroughly planning out the project for this summer. So reminder to everybody, we had a capital projects levy. It ended. We got our last collection of that in the fall. Our next collection starts up this spring. And that is a levy that the voters approved with overwhelming support. We greatly appreciate it. It will bring in approximately $12 million over the next 6 years. Paced out to have about $1 million collected every fall and every spring. So we do still have some money left over in the capital projects fund. You can see our February balance up there. There are some things already in progress. The roof for the ERC has been leaking for a long time. Yeah.
Back and see.
And the people in the front.
And the people in the front.
Sorry, Jason.
Yeah.
A little slider down there.
Little slider down.
Right, bottom right.
There you go, thank you. Sorry about that. Is that better? One more, stuck have it, okay. The ERC roof, the board approved previously. It'll put a metal roof on that. It uses material that's left over from putting the rest of the roofs on these campuses, so it'll match the rest. It's cheaper in that way. And working with the company that put on these roofs, we can get about a 60-year warranty on that. Which is better than the roof we have now, which has been on there for 25 years and is actively failing. The Chromebooks is a tech expense that was written into the capital projects levy. We moved early on that before we collected the funds to get a better price. The price will go up if we wait until after we collect the levy. So we're moving on that because we have the funds to do it, knowing that that's a levy expense and we, are going to eventually claim it from that fund. The HVAC controls were failing. They were old, they're outdated. They were running on software that's no longer supported. We had one laptop, but the whole thing was almost comical if it wasn't such a problem. But we had one laptop that we couldn't update because it had all the old software on it. If we updated it, it would have gone away and we'd lose control of all of our HVAC.
Which facility is that, or is it?
All of them.
District broadband?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Using an Etch a Sketch to run the heater.
Yes. Yes.
It was bad.
Yeah, it's almost comical if it wasn't such a problem.
Are those controls recoverable out of the modernization grant?
No, but they are compatible with anything we would put in under the modernization grant. We made sure of that, so the controls could stay. There will be savings over time. There was a time when Kendall Elementary, for example, we lost control of the heaters there and we had to just peg them at 72 and leave them. So overnight and on the weekends, still 72 in there. So we are signed up. I think we mentioned in the previous board update with a program with Puget Sound Energy to receive rebates for all of our savings. So for every therm we reduce, we will get rebates, and it's significant enough that over time, I feel like this is a good investment for the district, and frankly, it just needs to be done. But we're taking steps to make sure we get a return on investment. The Acme portable, we determined that the cost of placement was too much last year. So we own the portable. It's in storage out in Marysville. The company that we bought it from is just storing it for free. They have let us know that needs to end. They were good partners, but they need the storage space. They're putting a building on their property that they can't have there anymore. So they reached out to me and said that as soon as possible, they want to move it out. That's going to be craning the building over a portion of Acme there and putting it on. The cost of $115 is an estimate. They didn't get back to me with the actual increase, but he talked me through it. They have a new crane, so the crane's going to be about $12,000 more than the other estimate, which was about $102. But that includes placement, securing the structure on the frame, and putting all the external features like the ramp and staircase on it. So that's inclusive. Once we do this, the portable will be functional.
So hooking up utilities also?
Yep.
Sorry, why did the cost go up $12,000?
It's to do with the crane that they have to use. My understanding is that company had one crane that they could have used that would have kind of barely made it, but now that crane is out of service and they got a new crane that they charge more for.
Okay.
So
did we have an original estimate from them? I mean, could we ask them to honor the original estimate?
They've already stored it for free for over a year.
Okay.
So if we do that, they may say, great, storage was $500. So, yeah. I can look into it.
I mean,
there's
it's one of those things, right? Like, glad you have a new crane. I don't know why we're paying extra for that.
The other factor there is if they can store it until the ground dries out, we might be able to clear some brush, move some of the eco blocks that are back there, and just bring it in with a truck and place it, and that would be cheaper.
I think that would make sense.
Yeah, and I asked them if we could pursue that, and they weren't quite sure if they were able to manage their property and have room for it until it dries out.
But if we bring a crane back there, we'll ruin we'll make a big mess of our.
I think the crane would stay in a place where it could just move the building. And my understanding of it is going to go up and over Acme and onto the foundation there.
Ooh, that is an expensive crane.
$12,000.
About 12
last year.
grand.
Yeah.
So,
Total crane cost is over $100,000.
well, I mean, that's craning, attaching hookups,
Hauling it.
hauling it and,
Don't you have a crane?
all of the exterior, the ramp there, so.
Yeah, we could even conceivably park it close by it as the ground dries out.
If they can store it until the ground dries out,
No, but I mean, on our property.
Somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, and then we're responsible for the raccoons and whoever else might want to move in. But yeah, we could think about that. Eventually, we're going to have to do this. At the cost of driving it in is just about 95. So it's a significant savings to the capital projects, but like I said, we've already had it on their property for long enough that they called me and told me it had to go. So.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will work with them to get the best cost we can, but I also do need to work with them to eventually do what we said we were gonna do, which is place that portable. So. Okay. Questions before I move on to the next one? The next one's a little bit unique. Annually, the board approves a transfer from the capital projects fund to the general fund related to the expenditures that we're required to run some expenditures through the general fund, but if they're capital eligible, we can transfer them. So the board does that annually. Usually in this, the past practice has been in the fall. We do that transfer for the prior year. It's better accounting practice to do those expenditures in the same current year. So we can justify a second transfer of, I'm guessing around, we got over $500,000 of justifiable expenses, but capped at $500,000 just because we need the money in the capital projects fund. And if we can do that, we can double up that transfer for this year, which would be a net positive change to our fund balance of $500,000. It's nothing we could do again. This is the one time we can pull a lever and do it twice in a year because we're changing our accounting practices. So it's not a sustainable, we can't sustain a transfer of $1 million per year, but this year we could transfer $1 million. So we can talk more about
transferring from where to where?
Capital projects to general fund.
To general fund.
And we do it every year.
Not a loan.
Nope, it's a transfer.
Okay.
Yes. So the benefit is that it is a one-time infusion of cash to the general fund.
And that'll help our fund balance.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's one of those pictures that will help us get out of binding conditions.
Yes. If we stay on track for our current budget, that would put us over 4% and OSPI may let us out.
Why did the accounting practices change?
Because
The practices didn't. Every other district had been doing it the way Brian wants to do it. Mount Baker's practice had been different than the common practice.
And we could keep the old practice, or we could get an extra $500,000 into the fund balance before year end.
Right.
So that's why
it's an easy decision. I'm just curious.
Well, let's just flip a coin.
Yeah. So, and this is not asking you to approve that resolution now, but I will likely ask you to approve that resolution. I wanted to thoroughly vet my information, talk to other districts, read the RCWs, and we could change that accounting practice. And if the auditor questioned it, I think we've got standing to justify doing it. And I'd say the benefits far outweigh the minimal risk of the auditors coming to question it and us just being able to back it up.
No, we've had a few other things that we're hoping will come through that would get us out of buying conditions, but this would be a sure bet.
Yeah, and I don't know that this would put us up and over, and I don't know that OSPI would let us out because we still likely will have a loan from capital. But it would get the fund balance up significantly. So we'll never be able to do it again. And eventually I'm going to run out of these tricks, but we'll get out of binding conditions first. So, okay, questions before we move on?
We will still have a loan from capital, but this won't impact it.
No,
This does not create a loan. It's a permanent transfer.
That's a direct transfer. Yes.
Yeah, so what he's saying can't be repeated again is the fact that we're gonna do it twice in 1 year. From every year on out, it will be a yearly occurrence as opposed to twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
This year we can do it twice. It's a lever we pull once. So the next, and sorry, I'm happy to take more questions on that if you guys have it, but Okay,
Okay.
okay. The next section there is the anticipated revenue. So the loan repayment will actually be 1.1 million plus the interest that money has earned in the capital or in the general fund. So that loan repayment to the general fund includes another loan out of 500,000. So we'll repay ourselves $1 million plus and then loan ourselves again another 500 to a net benefit of the capital projects of about 526,000. The spring levy collection, people don't always pay their taxes. So instead of anticipating $1 million, we're anticipating a little bit less than $1 million, putting set a balance of $1,155,316 approximately to work with in the summer. So if we complete all those projects, I don't know if you go and buy any, you probably could go and buy any conditions twice. You're out of money in the capital projects fund too. So we need to prioritize these projects and see what we're going to do. The high school parking lot, that's grinding every place that's not salvageable, sealing everything that is, and repaving the top layer, and then repainting. It takes out all of the curbs that are there and puts bollards around the fire hydrant. The curbs, frankly, are a hazard for our snowplows, and do nothing for us but make it miss out on little parking. So that would be completely redoing the main high school parking lot, but then also we could separate that out. You see there's two values there. One is 228,000, almost 229,000. The other one's 28,000. The 28,000 is sealing and crack sealing and then resealing all of the adjacent parking lots only on this campus though still. So that's something that people have been calling for. And one of the reasons I like that is because it's a benefit to the high school, but also the public that uses the campus, and it's also quite visible. We could take a drone picture from the top and have a chalk party and write "Thank you, voters" on it, and make a big deal out of it. And it is a big deal. We're doing this because the voters approved it. So I like the visibility of it.
Are those in priority already?
Nope. Nope. Okay. Just a list.
And what are the asterisks for?
There's some notes. Sorry, I'll go down and show you the notes too. So the 800 windows, those I believe are original from 1937. There's places in there
So
where
when the windows are left, those are original.
Yeah.
When there's not windows left, that's
Yes,
that's
correct.
newer plexiglass.
Yes, and there's places currently where it's patched with hot glue and wood.
Yeah.
So I think those should be up for replacement.
No, I thought those qualified for the small.
They might, and before we move forward with any of this, we'll know if we got that grant.
Right.
Yes.
Which grant? What's that?
Small schools modernization grant.
It's a big
$12 million. Yep.
Because
Yes.
that would be a good one to fold into that. Since,
Correct.
yeah.
Yep.
So when
Yes.
do we find out on that one?
When the legislature determines who gets what.
That'll be this legislative session.
It will.
So we will find out on that before we have to decide on when and whether we move forward on the.
And how many of these things could be paid for with that grant?
Looking at the rest of this, do you know what the fire suppression system in the grant? I don't think so. I don't think it's qualified. No. So just the windows. The rest of it was based on modernizing mostly our HVAC systems and energy efficiencies.
So the one up above is already dealt with because that couldn't be part of that grant, right?
The HVAC control, no, we're not written into that grant. But we will receive rebates from the program we're in with Puget Sound Energy that over time will mitigate that cost.
Make up that.
Yes.
amount.
Yeah, plus
By not-
just the efficiencies.
By not keeping a building at 72 degrees overnight.
Yeah,
We'll save
and on
a-
the weekends.
We'll save a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
That's
especially
what-
when it's our largest
Yeah.
single facility.
Mhm. Yeah, because he had to stay on all night.
Yeah.
Because we lost control. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I shouldn't be so flippant to say we lost control. Our team worked really hard to do what they could. Just what they could do was fairly limited based on the tools they were working with.
Right.
So kudos to our maintenance and custodial staff. The stadium lights, that one's also two pieces. The stadium, they're fairly old and they're failing. The bulbs are expensive. They're going out more than not these days. That was written into the capital projects levy. It's not eligible for the small schools modernization grant. That total cost there is to replace all 7 of the arrays with LED arrays, which will not only be better lighting, but more efficient, and places a solar array on the concession stand roof to power that whole section of the concession stand and the stadium lights. So with the potential then, if there's excess, to start powering some of maybe the building near there, depending on how much energy we can draw from the solar array.
Does PG have programs for the solar array?
Interestingly enough, that solar array would not qualify for any rebates, but switching to LED lights does, and that's included in the proposal. So if we were to do that one without the solar array, it would be just under $70,000, and with the solar array, it's an extra $35,000. The fire suppression system is necessary but not flashy. To recap that one, is to bring everybody up to speed, that when the fire suppression system was put in, it was put in as a dry system. And when they ran the pipes for the actual suppression, they drooped over time. And it's been on over time, there's been condensation. And so the condensation is running, and now the fire suppression system is leaking and failing. We've had to replace some pipes there. We replaced some pipes with a grant that Nick wrote from our risk pool. They gave us
Why is it leaking if it's dry?
because there's condensation built up on the pipes that has run down to the spot where on the inside of the pipe. Yeah.
It's corroded through.
Yep. Yeah, and so some of the pipes have been replaced already. We had a winterization grant that the risk pool gave us that we replaced a big chunk of it. It got to the point where the compressor failed because there were so many leaks. It was pumping so much so consistently that the compressor burned out. So then we put a new one on there, and that one burned out, and we put a new one on there, or we rebuilt the second one. And again, kudos to our maintenance and custodial team for keeping that together. It's not constantly running right now, but the system does need to be replaced. The total cost is over $1.1 million. We have a grant that's $500,000. That's a reimbursable grant, so we'll have to figure out how to do that. And the wild card there is that I've been working with Tiger Construction, who was the original installer of that, I believe, and they've been doing the estimates on this. I think they didn't commit to it, but they talked to Southeast Fire, who would be doing this work. And there's a possibility that we could, finish the work in September, receive our bill, and then not pay it until the next levy collection comes in. So that would allow us to do all of these projects, but it would affect whatever we could do in the future, looking at next year.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the difference between the new system and the old system?
Hopefully the new system would work and not leak.
But I mean, is it still a dry system?
Yeah.
And is there much work for Tiger on that as a general contractor versus just?
I think mostly they go through Southeast Fire as a subcontractor through Tiger.
But I think they do a lot of the finish work afterwards.
Correct.
There's a lot of holes cut.
Yes, and the demolition. Yep. Southeast Fire installs the actual unit. And
yeah, I mean, did they comment on why that system failed? Is that it's not supposed to fail? I think it's that age, right? So
You're right. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure. That system should not go correct.
right.
yeah.
So I'd like to understand what they're gonna do different
Okay.
with the new one.
Okay. The Deming Campus Washington Alarm System, that's the system that arms all of our doors and buildings. When it was installed, it used the landline phone lines. This was in the 90s. It's no longer able to sense all of its sensors. So there's an alarm that goes off, or was going off pretty continually by Kelly Blockley's desk in the high school main office, and it was just chirping and chiming constantly because the system would lose its sight of a back door somewhere or a front door somewhere, and it would just be telling us I don't know what's happening there. I'm not giving an active alarm to say somebody's opened the door, but it doesn't know. So this modernizes that to be cellular based, and that's similar to the system that we just put in Harmony after that one failed with the leak that we had there. And the last item is just the exterior lights on the 800 building. There's parking over there, staff comes and goes, kids come and go. And there's not a lot of lighting along Mitchell Road out there. So that would be just a series of lights along the side of the 800 building to illuminate that parking area and entrance and provide extra safety over there. So at this point in time, I don't want to get behind to where in June we decide we're going to do the parking lot and there's nobody to do it, right? So we need to start scheduling some of this out and getting some of those estimates and engineering done. All of these jobs, except for the Washington alarm, and if we were only to go for the exterior lights on the 800 building, we'll need to go out for formal competitive bid. So I need to get the process going if we're going to have construction this summer. What are your thoughts on?
How much money will we have left in our capital project fund if we do all this?
Negative 180,914.
How can we do that?
We can't.
Okay.
That's the purpose of this discussion.
Okay.
Well, if we held off on the windows until we hear from the legislature, then we would have the pathway forward for spending. We wouldn't have the cash on hand. It's a reimbursable grant, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
We're not really gonna be in a position to borrow. But
If we were to borrow, the interest on that loan would come from the general fund. So I'm sure that we could find a lender for a short-term loan for that. And I know there are companies that work with districts that get money from the state because it still work for them. But we would be using a short-term loan and the interest would come from the general fund.
And could we then pay for that loan with the modernization grant money?
My understanding of the modernization grant is that's a reimbursable grant. So when we get that, we're going to have to navigate that. I've been in touch with Trevor Carlson, who did our loan the last time and does bond planning. He's the bond lawyer. And we're gonna work together to minimize the interest cost and be able to.
I'd like
do all that.
to get kind of a picture of, so how we want to navigate the 12 million from if we get that small, because we need to keep, whether it's through a loan or whether we slow down some of our current projects until we build up enough of a balance that we can basically loan ourselves within. We can accomplish projects, get reimbursed and keep our balance up that way.
Yeah.
So maybe have you pieced together those two scenarios?
I certainly will if we get the grant.
Because I'd like to I mean, anything that might go into that category of the small schools modernization grant, I'd like to hold off.
Okay.
And then have a pretty, so weigh the pros and cons of and whether we have the capacity for borrowing from ourselves. In that case, we're probably gonna we would be using money too fast, I think, probably to be able to do that.
Yeah, if we get that grant, I'll be working carefully with OSPI and with our vendors and partners and with Trevor Carlson to schedule all that out. It's a significant body of work that I will undertake if it's necessary, but I won't if it's not.
Yeah, we've in the past at least 6 years, we've used LGOs for that.
Mm-hmm.
Which current interest rates I don't like for LGOs.
Correct. The idea and my hope, the county treasurer has been good partners in working with us. And they wouldn't have an interest in getting more and more interest out of us. So they might be our best partner and possibility for a series of very short-term loans. I have not discussed that with them yet, but they were willing to loan us $500,000 in a tax anticipation note against the general fund. So if they know we have a $12 million grant come in, that as soon as we pay it, we can get reimbursed for it.
How are their rates versus, what are they set on the market?
They offered us 1% lower than the bank prime. So it's still pretty close. I think the difference would be a bank would want a commitment to have at least a year-long loan or at least a
Right.
16-month loan. Whereas the county treasurer, if we were able to say, you know, we're going to pay this vendor and then we're going to get a reimbursement within 2 months and we want to repay it. I don't know that we get a bank to agree
No.
to a series of short-term loans like that. So I guess the answer.
So
is
that,
I'm
yeah,
working
so
on-
it's putting together this scenario, it's actually 3 scenarios we're talking about now, so it seems like. And having each, the pros and cons of each one, but the county route sounds like
Yeah.
it might fit us pretty well.
And they'd have to agree to it, but they've been really good partners in the past. So they might, or they might not. But there's, so the short answer is that yes, I'm working on planning that out, but there's nothing concrete yet because we don't have the grant.
Yeah, I like getting stuff done this summer as much as possible, but not if it's gonna extend us out to a situation where we're not comfortable with, so.
Go one more time, the application, the modernization grant to the stadium light,
No application.
no application.
No.
Even the, but part of that is the solar part, right?
Yeah, and we didn't write that into the original grant. That was, when I reached out to this company about it, and I reached out to 3 companies to see who wanted to do our stadium lights. It turned out to be the company that installed it 25 years ago, came back.
Yeah.
And they proposed a solar array. And I said, sure, let's entertain that.
That was after our application was already submitted.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, well after.
Okay, so if that's the case, we could take that we could knock that 102 down by $25,000, right?
Mhm.
If
30.
It'd be 35.
34,000.
Yeah.
If we needed to. I mean, I don't know what the goal is for the remaining fund balance there.
Well, the remaining fund balance, we need to have a fund balance for the capital projects fund, but this does not include, so in October, so say this all happens in the summer and we go into September with $130,000. In October, we're gonna get another almost $1 million. So we'd have just over $1 million in October, and we'd have right around 2 million going into the summer of 26. Unless we choose to pay for some of the fire suppression system out of that first levy collection. But if we take off the 800 windows, we don't have to. We can do all of this, claim the grant from OSBI, and
This on the spring transfer next year.
Right.
What about putting the 800 windows back in and pausing the stadium lights until $1 million?
Were the stadium lights failing, or is it just an upgrade because they're old and to be cheaper? to
I
run?
understand they're failing. They're blowing through bulbs fairly rapidly, and they're very expensive to replace, and we actually have to rent a lift.
Do it too.
So the bulbs are expensive, and then we have to rent a lift and get our guys up there. And
I don't think that's enough money to keep us positive.
so you're
So does the
concerned about
window-
the low fund balance?
No, I'm just saying, if we did put the windows back in and took the lights out, I think we would still be
still be
negative.
short. We'd still be
Would
short.
it- Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember.
Can you
what
talk
the
about the
800 was.
parking lot one more
it's
time,
like-
Brian? So that's a full regrind, re-asphalt, reseal, repaint, curbs out, all that stuff. And it was broke up in a part where it's just a seal and paint.
Oh,
Correct.
276.
What was that figure on, what were the part of the cheaper part?
So the parking lot, if we just do the main lot, which is the part that really needs to be done, 229,000 roughly. And then the crack sealing and sealing of the rest of the adjacent parking lots would be 28.
What do we risk if we put off the parking lot for 1 calendar year?
We could do that. Sure.
I'm just, because if it needs to be done right when it's done, there's no point in sealing it and then coming back and grinding it.
Well, these are 2 different projects in 2 different areas of the park.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
2 different areas.
Yeah,
Because the
so-
ceiling is just part we're not gonna grind.
Okay.
The
so
rest of
you
it, we
could
get a
do-
full job.
You could do just the ceiling and then come back.
Yeah, we could do just a cheaper part of that, but it doesn't, so essentially, if you think about the parking lot here, the main lot that's in the center between the campuses, that's really falling apart.
Yeah.
And we've been banging those curbs with our plows for a long time, so they're falling apart too. It needs to be repainted, all the lines are gone.
Yeah.
That's the part I think that really needs to be done. And the section along Mitchell Road, where the parking in front of the 800 building. So it would be grinding anything that needs to be ground out there. Asphalt's usually laid in 2 lifts of 3 inches, so you go down about 3 inches, and then scale it up with a little ramp to the spot that's good. Go back and re-level everything, and then put a new lift of 3 inches of asphalt on top of it. Seal the joints and the barriers, redo the concrete, and redo the concrete where we're going to have concrete anymore, and we'll get rid of all the concrete in the middle, and then repaint all the new asphalt. The places like over by the wood shop and back when by the concession stand, there's some significant cracks, but it doesn't need to be ground and resealed. The other parking lot by the middle school has some cracks, but it doesn't need to be ground and resealed. So that would be just crack sealing and then an overlay seal and then repainting.
So technical question,
Mhm.
if we let the deteriorating main lot continue to deteriorate for 1 more year before we fix it.
Yeah.
Does that have any material impact on our ability to fix it?
No.
I think allowing the part that we're gonna retain and reseal would, if the cracks are such that the water is intruding and.
Well, I mean, it's all getting worse. I don't think it's going to totally fail within the next year.
I think it's also important to acknowledge, because I don't, that we kind of breeze over pretty quickly, that the concept that if we're able to work with Tiger about the bill process, that if we get billed for all of Tiger, for the last part of Tiger's work in October when the new collection comes in, then everything there can be done. And Mike's friends with Tigers, they're a good partner of ours. They're the ones doing the emergency work at Kendall right now. So I don't think that's a foregone conclusion that we can talk to them about that.
So it would be like we waited till next summer, but we get it done this summer.
So that's for the fire suppression.
Right, but it's still, yes, it's a fire suppression system, but that cost of it.
Oh.
Yeah, it would ease our cash flow problem.
Yeah.
If that one worked. Now, they've got a sizable subcontractor on this, so it's.
But they did indicate Southeast Fire would be willing to work with us on that. I didn't get a formal agreement or a schedule for billing. And if we were to go forward with that, I would have to be pretty clear about that with them. It's just a possibility at this point, which is, the phase we're at is these possibilities, right?
I think it might be would it be useful for you if we gave you a loose sense of priority?
From Public Board.
Right, so. Right, like, is fire suppression more important than the parking lot? I mean, right.
Sounds like. That's my opinion, certainly.
Like, so if we're giving you kind of a sense of, here's and then as we get more information, if that gives us more options and flexibility, wonderful.
Yeah.
But worst case scenario.
Are we worried about a low fund balance?
I don't know, should we be?
I don't know.
Yeah, because we have, so these are separate fund balances for each fund, and this fund, unless we time something, we don't have enough to cover all this stuff, so.
No, but why wouldn't we just go with this list as is?
Well, the only way the list as it would work is if we were able to hold off on the payment for the fire suppression, or we would be negative 100.
Well, the list as is, we've removed
We removed the
800
windows.
windows.
So we're positive.
Yeah. So, yeah, we could schedule this out.
Yeah, if we wait 1 more year on the 800 windows, we would have we're not gonna have the cash. We can, I don't know, if we can swing, it would be better to wait. If we're waiting till the end of the legislative session, it's too close to the construction season to really pull together a contract anyway.
Maybe. The competitive bidding process takes a few weeks. The company that has already, it was the same company that did the windows at Acme.
Okay.
And so they won the bids last time, and they actually had previously done a bid for Acme.
We got an energy grant for the Acme and we didn't have to pay for it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done them.
Yeah, it was written into the capital levy prior to this current capital levy.
I'm gonna take a stab at it.
Okay, let's do it.
Fire suppression.
Number one.
You're protecting your current asset and its safety. Okay, then I would say, and you all jump in here, the stadium lights seem superfluous, but they're costing us extra money. So doing that is actually putting money back in our pockets over time. So the sooner we do that, the faster, the more savings we recoup. We're not just flushing that down the toilet. If the 800 windows can go with the grant, we just sort of put a pin in that for a minute. The 800 building exterior lights, that's a safety issue, which to me is slightly above parking lot, even though I know it's destroying our snow plows. It's not to say that we aren't gonna do it, it's that maybe we'll put it off for a year if we had to. So I would rank that after the stadium lights, and I put the alarm at the bottom, just based on what you told us. It sounds like it's a nuisance. And it needs to be taken care of, but it may not be as emergent.
Correct.
That's my stab at it. Anybody want to, and I'm not fixed on it, but that's just sort of.
If I may share a comment, I serve as your humble secretary, but we, the 800 building is a challenge for our students and staff that work in there day in, day out. We actually have Stephanie here who's in that building. Public comment, sorry, has passed. But the temperature there is, you know, there's RCWs around temperature for classrooms, and I'm not sure how often, if there are times where that might become a challenge with the temperature.
Doesn't the RCW have a minimum but no maximum?
Yeah, but with the minimum, there are times, there's no maximum temperature, which is an issue in there, but there's also minimum temperatures, yes. So it's just my.
And that would save money in the long run too.
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't get the grant for that, then I would probably put that.
Above the parking lot.
I'd put it above the parking lot. I'd put it above the stadium lights. I'd probably make it number 2 if we didn't have the grant. Because if it's.
The windows you're talking about?
Yeah, if that's affecting heating costs and it's impacting learning because people are not physically comfortable.
But if we pay for it out of the fund, we can't pay for anything else, right, with the grant, right?
Right.
So, and then we would.
Two
that's why we
scenarios,
have the
one with the grant and then
One without the grant.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll know about the grant at the end of April, right?
When do we need to start scheduling some of this?
Soon, we've got time if we do the priorities today.
Because maybe you could like.
Well, the
we
ones
could-
that will have to go to formal bid, cause you got, it's gotta be in the paper for 2 weeks, you gotta do the work, it's gotta be in the paper for 2 weeks, then you gotta,
Yeah.
so, and you got 3 to almost the grant time to post that out to
Yeah.
bid.
It seems like you could start on fire suppression stuff, bid process and all of that, and then when we find out in April, we can.
I'll need to go back and review to see if there was a bid process done, because Tiger has done a lot of work with that system and given us pretty thorough engineering on it. So,
The size of it, we have to have an open bid for that.
For that cost.
yeah, unless that's already been done, and that's why.
If it's been
I don't
done,
think
okay.
that's- Yeah, I haven't found a record of that, but I need to double check before.
I don't think it has.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it does make sense to tie the 800 windows to the grant. If we don't get the grant, then we need to weigh. I think the only other 2 flexible things timing wise are the parking lot and the lights.
Yeah.
That we have to choose between the windows and the parking lot and the lights. But I think that and the alarm is I know when we had problems with the Acme alarm, it was more than just a headache.
Correct. This is different.
Is that the key cards? or
This
the
is-
alarm?
No, the Acme alarm was calling the fire department, so we're gonna start getting charged for false alarms.
But we're not getting. they're
This is
not calling.
correct.
Yeah, we-
Yeah.
We were called out for that. I remember one time the
We as a
Seahawks were
firefighter.
playing. And Ben was our operations manager, so I called him because I knew he's a big Seahawks fan to come out there during the games because the rest of the fire department was there. He appreciated
Yeah,
kind of
very
humor.
good. Okay, so we've got priorities of the Kendall Fire Suppression System, number 1, stadium lights, number 2, exterior lights, number 3, parking lot, number 4, and the Washington alarm, number 5. Do we want to include the solar array in the stadium lights for savings down the road for an extra
Is
$35,000?
that something that could be added on at a later date, or does it need to be done at the same time?
Good question. I can go back and ask.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
And if we could even get a loose estimate of return on investment on that solar array, that helps sort of with that thinking process there.
Sure.
Yeah. Cause if it's paying for itself within, yeah.
I'm sure they'll be happy to provide that.
I also think that solar in general should be something that over time we can find a grant for.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was surprised.
sounds like a lot of those
Well,
grants have gone
There,
away.
it's paused right now, like, North Fork just put in our solar and we got a grant from the federal government and it was, payment of that has been paused, but there's hope that it's gonna be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I recognize from the federal level that solar is kind of.
And then once we find out we do get the grant or don't, then we would move the 800 windows to second and then remove the parking lot. Is that what we're gonna do?
No, I think if you get the grant, you can do all of it.
But
If we don't,
get
if we don't get the grant for the windows, they would take the number 2 priority. Am I understanding?
Yeah,
That's what
I
I'm
would say
hearing.
that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if no grant, do the windows, leave the parking lot to a later date.
Is there anything we're missing? I mean, I kind of like just, okay, let's rank them, but I'm not, married to that. If there's some
Yeah, I
piece
mean,
of it
like-
that we haven't thought about.
To me, the two big unknowns are the grant, whether or not we're gonna get that. The other piece is the pay schedule of the Kendall Fire Suppression System.
Yeah.
If it is a form of the project that could take us into, they can't do starting until June anyway. That could very foreseeably be paid in October when the next collection comes in.
And then that's
Mhm.
really not a
Mhm.
cash flow issue at
Yep.
that point.
And then there, maybe you've got this on here, but that the work on the Acme siding and things of that nature that we're focused on for the grant. We could trigger those in a time that that wouldn't be feasible to do this summer.
No,
We
and
would take a year of.
yes, and my understanding of the grant as well, to be clear with the 800 windows, that still might be delayed by a year if it's under the grant, because that grant is a initial payment for planning and engineering, and then further reimbursement payments for the actual construction. So there might be I don't know if it's mandatory though. I don't know if there's a mandatory year of engineering, or if we say, no, we're ready for this one, the engineering's been done, let's go. If then we can get a reimbursement on that. That's something I'm unclear about with that grant. Okay,
Thank you, Brian.
great, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think having a payback estimate for the solar would be valuable.
Return on investment.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had, I think with the windows at Acme, we had like an 800-year.
Is the solar just the power of the stadium lights, or does it connect to the rest of it?
Whatever you want it to be, Ed.
It sounds like
It's more money if we connect the rest. The guy that I brought out to look at it, really passionate about it, and he was really excited about it. He had been installing them on his own home before he came. He took a break to come out and look at ours.
Okay.
And he was talking about expansion and looking at all of our roofs. I didn't ask him to, but he was just like looking at
Yeah.
What faces what way and where we can grab onto. And the material that we used for the roof, they make a really nice, easy bracket that you can put it on with no damage to the roof. You're not,
Screwing into it.
yep, no, so it's real easy. And he thinks there's a lot of potential up here. So the more we do, again, the more return we get down the road, but we only have so much that we can put on front.
And that one in particular is pretty close proximity to our pump house as well, so that could be helpful.
Yeah. I wonder if that box does the pump house. It might.
There you go.
Yeah. Check in on that.
Thanks, Brian.
Also, just before you leave, the AFRC response, you did.
I sent them something this
Okay,
afternoon. Yeah.
yeah, so we don't need to meet tomorrow.
Correct.
And if there's anything further, I'll just let them know we're willing to. I think maybe a reference to OSBI's website might be useful to them also.
Okay.
So that they can get some of the data off of.
If you'd like to meet, I'll be here.
Huh?
Is it on the agenda?
No, but I,
Roll it on.
we're trying to
guys
trying to
can talk
solve this
about
by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Send them a text.
Okay, finance report.
Alrighty, update for the district finances for February 2025. Some key notes, fund balance is currently negative, which is what we anticipated. As you have seen in the graph, last few sessions, I'll show you the graph again as well. That's how things go when your fund balance isn't where it should be in a sustainable spot, hence the need for a higher fund balance. And we do have the cash. We also have the loan from the capital projects fund. We also have the tax anticipation note with the treasurer on hand if necessary. It does, that negative fund balance isn't going to change us paying bills or paying our employees, but it does just really emphasize that need for that more sustainable fund balance. We intend to be back up above zero this month. But then again, there could be another dip after this too, which you see in this graph here. This is our district on the right. And as you guys know, this is the model that was developed by the president of WASBO, which is the Washington Association of Business Officers, school business officers. Knowing that these spikes we expect coming up, we have a levy collection in May, and then safety net grant from the state that Ian and Brian and their teams worked on pretty hard, coming in August 31st. And as you guys recall, the way apportionment works for right now is that 22.5% of it comes in July and August, because that's how OSPI is able to keep their books as healthy as possible, is by holding our money as long as possible. There is current legislation right now that might move that 22.5% to 25%. So I'll leave my opinions aside about holding 25% of our revenue for the months when we don't have students, but there you go. To answer questions about federal funding allocations, this was something that we chatted about a couple of weeks ago. Breakdown of that, by and large, the food services was the big one, which we chatted about. We still don't know what title's going to look like. There's a breakdown of the federal funds that we receive.
I forgot about Medicaid reimbursement. Is there any talk about changes to that?
I think the federal information that the public receives is the same information we receive as far as, any of the Medicaid stuff. I know that there's been challenges in other lines of work with Medicaid currently with, assisted living homes, but I don't know. Ian, have we seen any immediate changes here yet with that?
No.
Okay. All right. Cash balances for our 5 funds. Our enrollment, so our annual average FTE for this at this time of the year is 1,501, which is above that amount we had budgeted. It is important to note that, there are trends occasionally year over year between enrollment. So you did notice last year being orange, that we did drop a little bit this month. We're we kind of, looks like so far we've survived that drop, but we'll see, what happens next month. We did see a decrease of 3 FTE over just the last week. So something we're monitoring closely. Revenue tracking, as I mentioned, that July and August is where 22.5% of our revenue comes in. Where we should be with collecting our revenue. Expenditure tracking, pretty well spotted too. We're halfway through the year. So to be at 16.2 million of the 33.1 million is pretty typical. And this is the one where, we talk about the revenue of last year in consideration of the apportionment advance we received in November, which is why the blue bar in November is so much higher than the orange bar. Expenditure, and this is the one where the revenue, there's a lot of revenue that's not in our control, but expenditures are in our control. And you guys know how inflation's been going, and still we are spending less. We spent less in February of this year than we did in last year. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that's a testament to our staff and our teams for doing that work, because their workload has increased, and also they're doing with materials more with less materials because we've asked them to do so, and it's really been a team effort to make those kinds of changes. Revenue to expenditure by month, again, it's October shows us that levy collection. So that's why you'll see months like that with certain revenue, because of the combined revenue, whether it's local and state put together. So this year we've spent about $1 million more than revenue so far this year. But again, that's because revenue doesn't come in the way, and this is this next chart. I mean, expenditure by and large in school districts will stay pretty flat the whole year because it's predictable expenditures. A little high in the beginning to open up some POs for back to school stuff. But then it's the revenue that varies wildly. So look at our fund balance from last year to where we are now. Again, recall that November time period is when we got the apportionment advance, which is why this, we weren't seeing this October, November slide that happened this year, which is what you'll see if we go back to that sample chart. That's why that didn't occur here, is because of that apportionment advance. And so the trade-off there is we're not going to repay an apportionment advance in the summertime. So this is where we have reached below zero, which is again what we expected, which is why that loan from the capital projects fund exists. See, typical pattern. This is right where we are here. And as the levy collections come in again, that's what we're going to see in May. We'll go from there. This is a repeat of that slide we showed earlier, just kind of showing you how the importance of that strong fund balance, but also the fact that what we're seeing here is what other schools are seeing as well. But those with balanced budgets and with a strong fund balance are able to maintain through these challenges. However, what we're also seeing though is that some of the schools that did have strong fund balances didn't have balanced budgets, which is why they're seeing their fund balance decrease.
Well, what level of fund balance would we have needed to not go below?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you look here, this is it's funny, this actually works out well. This example that Amber from Oak Harbor drew up kind of matches ours pretty closely, honestly. We started with about $1 million and we anticipate to end with about $1 million, which is what we have here. You look at our deepest trough here is about negative 500K. So that shows you that if we had been at 1.5 million, which is roughly what we want our fund balance to be at 4 or 5%, then we could avoid that negative dip below zero. But then looking at more than 8.5%, you get just that much higher, maybe between 1.5 to 1.75, and then you'll never touch that zero. Yeah. Other questions?
I think that's very well presented and.
Thank you.
Graphs are.
Yeah, you bet. Also thank Brian for his help with the visuals. Supportive.
And I certainly do recognize the stress and strains that are part of being able to make those numbers look that way. And there's no way around that. So that concludes the finance report. Meeting schedule, I think our next schedule is, trying to remember the right date, it's April 4th?
Yep, that's right.
April 4th, and I believe it's 9 a.m.
I think it's 9:30 to 11.
9:30.
Yeah.
We have a CTE visit. I'm trying to think where we should.
That's why we just meet at the front steps here and Todd will lead us. So I'm not sure if Todd wants to start at the barn or in the shop. So we'll just meet at a central spot right at the steps
Meet
here.
the district office.
Yeah.
At 9:30.
April 4th. Yeah. I think, did I
Wear
send
your
it to-
boots.
Yeah, certainly wear your boots. Yeah. Perfect.
And that concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Just that special note that there's no spring break meeting.
No meeting on April 10th.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Danny.
Spring break.
We're not meeting April 10th. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, it's spring break.
No one's gonna be here.
I'll be here.
Russ will be here. I'll meet you out front. No, I'll be here.
Come on, Sammy. Where's your school spirit?
I'd say.
Speaking of visits, if any of you wanted to join us on a snow boost day, I'd be happy to take people. I can take a chaperone or another adult on a snow boost day.
Very good.
Okay, I'll email
Yeah,
you.
send me,
Huh?
yeah.
You gotta go? Okay.
Like, so you
All right.
That would be
Let me know if
amazing.
you're gonna go.
So next year, if we keep it up, I don't know, if Perkins, we taper it with Perkins, so that's kind of like next year, but we could go with your dog. next
Yeah.
year.
Cool.
It's going next year.
Yeah.
And we're going this year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll email you.
You wanna go on the trip?
Oh.
On the boat. Yeah. You wanna go? You can go. You can, Holly will email all of us and we can.
When is it? No?
Yeah, I'll email you with the dates. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm thinking the week